Today I want to talk about a major divide we face in society and how we can use a very ancient technology to address that. This is my friend Adam Grant. When growing up, he actually wanted to be a diver. So he worked really hard, made it to the Junior Olympics. On the way, he really wanted to win this one major championship, major tournament called the NC2A. He's in the final rounds, and he wants to get the gold. In the practice, right before the final round, he sees somebody, one of his competitors, making a mistake. And he's like, should I help him, should I not? He helps him. And guess what? He got gold, Adam got silver. Next year, his final chance to win this gold, he really wants to win the gold. Lo and behold, the same scenario, he sees someone else in the practice rounds, and he looks at him and he says, I think he's making this mistake. He'll do better if I help him. He helps him, that guy gets gold, he gets silver. So he had this hunch growing up that nice guys finish last. And as he became very successful in business and now is an international best-selling author, he actually became a professor at Wharton Business School, and he studied this generosity. And he says, wow, do nice guys really finish at the bottom? So he studied it, and what he noticed, he came up with something very interesting. He says there's three kinds of people. He says there's the takers, there's the matchers, and there's the givers. Takers take, givers give. And matchers will say, if you're a nice guy, I'll be nice to you, but if you're a taker, I'm going to put a boundary. So in any given ecology, you have three of these people. Now, what he expected was that givers would be at the bottom and that takers would be at the top. And so sure enough, he looks at the bottom and he says, oh, I find givers here. But what he didn't expect was that givers were also at the top, disproportionately at the top. And when givers succeed, they succeed in a very different way than takers. And so what Adam starts to point us to is this very fundamental question: what does it take to create a giver culture? And we can look at this in many ways. Society has many problems and we have many solutions, but all too often it's a little bit like the iceberg where we're just looking at the top 10%. 90% of the iceberg is below the surface. And so how do we start to tap underneath? And my experiments over the last 20 years, I've been trying to look at some of these issues in society. And what I've noticed underneath it, which I think a lot of other people have as well, is that we are profoundly disconnected. And this disconnection shows up in many different ways. But today I want to talk to you about three of them. Right? The first one is sort of an obvious one when we look at the world. It's a systemic divide. It's a divide between us and the systems that we're embedded in. The markets that we transact in, the climate that we're connected to, the policies that we create. And it leads to all kinds of things like this. Right? 8 men in the world, as of this year, 8 men in the world own more financial capital than the bottom 3.5 billion. Right? Half of the world. Serious disconnect. Similarly, this is a photo as of this month, this crack in one of the largest ice shelves in Antarctica. Larsen C is what it's called, and they're seeing it melt. And if it actually continues on this way, it's going to change the geography of the world. So we as a society have not been very good at solving these very systemic issues because of this disconnect. A second big divide is the social divide. And this is a divide between self and the other. Divide between each other. This is a photo of everyone taking a selfie with Hillary Clinton. Hillary's waving, and none of them are looking at each other. And it's perfectly emblematic of this social divide. You know, they asked young kids, they said, if you had to give up one of these three things, what would you give up? Your cell phone, your internet access, or your sense of taste? And a whopping 72% chose sense of taste. And that's alarming, but if you put yourself in their shoes, the reason why that is because their sense of connection comes from their internet and from their cell phones. So we want to be connected over anything else, but it's just that we have cheapened that idea of connection. And so how do we start to reconnect? It becomes a very present question. And then there's the third divide, which is the spiritual divide, and this is a divide between ourselves. self with self. We're disconnected with ourselves. And you see this in all kinds of data, but perhaps the most alarming is this, in today's era, in fact, this is statistically true, we're more likely to commit suicide than die in a field of conflict, in wars. So this is a cover of Time magazine which says 1 US soldier commits suicide every single day. And it's not just active soldiers, 20 veterans do the same thing every single day. And it's not just the military. In the US, the suicide rates have hit a 30-year high as of this year. And the best way we know how is Prozac and antidepressants. Is that really the best we can do? Can we do better across these divides? And I think the question that is imminent is, how do we reconnect? And just as we looked below the surface to find the problem, one of the things that I have sort of stumbled into in my own personal journey to address this, to do whatever little I can, has been this fundamental insight, or perhaps a technology, if you want to call it that,